This is the Rugby Ascendant Podcast with Welman and Wyatt.
It's the Rugby Ascendant Podcast. Our friend Wyatt is here. You and I had a bit of a misunderstanding in terms of Eastern time and South African Central time, but we managed to pull it off. Here we are. Hello, Chris. How's it going?
It's going pretty well. How about yourself? How gaan it?
It's gone good, man. I had to switch back into Afrikaans. You threw me there.
Well, we got to keep you guessing.
Yeah, you saw the look of bewilderment on my face. I'm on my English mode now. I'm very close to the end of my English for the day. So if Afrikaans slips through, excuse me.
Well, I mean, but I have to say, listen, ek praat nie Afrikaans nie, maar ek verstaan.
You see, that's the thing. That's the most dangerous kind of Afrikaans. You walk into an escalator or somewhere, or a lift, like we call it, and you start discussing the guy next to you, and he ends up understanding you when you're overseas. That's one of the most embarrassing things that ever happened to me. So I'll be careful.
All right, go ahead.
You and I decided we're going to talk about something else, a bit of a different angle on the Springboks and versus Ireland game. And you had a bit of a think about the officiating. And I think that's one of the more controversial things to talk about in general. We don't want to be critical, unnecessarily critical, but we have to, give credit where it's due and criticize where it's due. Tell me what you thought about that game, starting with the referee himself.
Well, absolutely. But before I do that, let me preface this, what I always say when I talk about officiating World Rugby. Being an official in rugby union is the most difficult officiating job of any sport out there. In tennis, the guy sits up there in a big chair overlooking the game. Pretty easy. In basketball, you run half the distance down the court, but you got 2 or 3 other officials on the pitch with you. In American football, you've got half a dozen guys and television review and all this stuff. But in rugby union, you've got a person on the pitch who's got to cover the action in front of them, along the side, the things going on away from the ball. And yes, there's a TMO, but the TMO has been applied inconsistently, in my view, in the past few years. So that's what I want to say. It's a tough job. You got to be physically fit, and it's really the most difficult officiating job. With that said, I also want to say that historically, I think that Luke Pierce has been a very good official. And I've never had any major issues with Ben Whitehouse, who was the TMO in this game. But I've got to say that this game, from an officiating standpoint, wow, you want to talk about letting players just get away with everything under the sun. That's what happened in this game. And it worked both ways. Now, the Irish are not thrilled with the call with James Lowe going into touch, but not going into touch, and the ball staying in and Cheslin Colby chasing down. We can talk about that. But there's also calls that went against South Africa. And so it was on both sides, but let me just give you one right away. So the try that James Lowe scored, where he went down the sideline, they had that ruck formed, and one of the players was Keller or somebody, and I think it was Keller, was accused of raking the ball backwards. That in fact did happen. That was a great catch by the TMO, but Peter Steph du Toit did a neck roll on Keller. That's why he was off his feet. He twisted him over, and that neck roll was missed. So, I mean, that goes both ways. Then we've got the hit on Craig Casey was, I mean, look, I'm not going to say it was dirty. It wasn't dirty by RG Snyman, but man, I think it was gratuitous. He didn't have to hit him. The ball was gone. He could have eased up, but he went high on him, and Casey's head snapped back and hit the ground. That's unfortunate. No, but that wasn't even looked at. That should have been looked at by the TMO. They could have made a discussion whether it warranted a penalty or card, but nothing came out of that. And that was, I think that's just a couple examples, and on that James Lowe situation where he was going into touch and tried to keep the ball alive. First off, what is he thinking? I mean, so what if the Springboks get a line out at your 38-meter line? So what? He took a huge risk. I mean, Cheslin Colby's on that wing, and Kurtley Arnsey is on the other wing. You're going to risk that your fullback is going to get over there and save that? That was a dumb decision. This, I would argue, is one of the worst games I ever see James Lowe play, to get away from the officiating for a moment. He had knock-on down there, and he made a bad decision trying to kick the ball out of the try zone. Just a bad game on his part. But the officiating, there's a lot more here. And let me just go 2 more very quick, and then I'll pause. We can talk about a few more issues here. There were 2 things that I was literally screaming on my live broadcast at as they unfolded. One was Jesse Creel was taken down with a shot to the throat when he was running full speed down the sideline and taken out. Wasn't even reviewed, no penalty, nothing. And that was unfortunate. Another was when Ireland intentionally knocked the ball on a pass. I think it was from Villiers on the near side of the pitch going to Cheslin Colby, and there's only one defender back there, and he was out of position. That ball was intentionally knocked forward. Not all it was called was knock on and a scrum to South Africa. That stuff can't be allowed. Listen, 10 years ago or so, maybe a little bit longer, I was a vocal complainer about how quickly that we give cards. They always give a yellow card anytime you knock the ball on and you didn't get it. They didn't care whether you had a legitimate chance of catching. I thought that was a stupid rule, and I still think it's a stupid rule. But when a player intentionally knocks the ball down and has no legitimate chance at getting it, that should be a card. Anyway, that's just a couple right there, and there's a lot more, and we can talk about. And the one where Bongi Banambi is called for crawling, that is horse manure. He was clearly on his feet, and he stole that ball. But anyway, and your thoughts?
Well, about the RG Snyman one specifically, I want to talk to you about that. There's a lot of debate going on about that one. And obviously, it depends on which side of the pond you're sitting, which pair of glasses you're wearing. But from what I saw is that Casey still had the ball when RG tackled. The ball wasn't gone. The ball was lost when RG tackled him. The ball wasn't gone before RG tackled him, if you understand where I'm getting at.
Okay.
So I don't think it was late or anything like that. You have a problem with it when a 6'9" lock tackles a
3 foot tall guy.
Exactly. So you always have a problem with that. And to a bit of a degree, it almost looked like the same thing that happened. You and I talked about it when Roux hit his head against the referee's knee. And that was almost looked to me like he might have hit the referee to a degree. But again, like you said, Harry, my friend called it the other day, when you fall on Loftus, it's like falling on the road. The ground is that hard. And Casey, I think, was just unfortunate to have a bit of whiplash there. And it was a combination of things. I honestly don't think that was so much of a late tackle or a dangerous, or even a dirty tackle for that matter.
No. That's what I'm saying is it should have been reviewed. I mean, in real time, it looked like it needed to be reviewed. And it looked like it was high. That's all I'm saying, but it wasn't reviewed. I mean, there are times when the TMO should be engaged, and I think that's the time he should have been engaged. If they come back and say that, that Snyman didn't hit him high, I mean, the guy's short, and he was releasing the ball when he hit him, then I would have been okay with it. I'm just saying that should have been reviewed, and it wasn't. There were, there are times they review things that are ridiculous. It's so obvious a try was scored, why aren't they? But there are also times when it's pretty obvious that something should be reviewed, and that's one of them. The same with the Jesse Creel. That was brutal. I mean, Jesse Creel is a warrior, man. He took a heck of a shot, and the TV commentators didn't even mention it. I'm like, are you serious? I mean, this guy just got taken out. I mean, I forget who the tackler was, came right at him like this with a forearm right into the neck. And it was, they didn't even show the replay. I had to go back and on my stream and go back and watch it just to find the replay because they never came back to it. Anyway, I mean, some things need to be reviewed, and that's something it wasn't. But yeah, anyway. So here's one I want to talk about too. And look, Faf is a great scrum half, but he's not my favorite scrum half. I mean, I'm not just interested, full disclosure. But Faf had one knock on that were pretty obvious for Helen Keller or Stevie Wonder to see right in front of Luke Pierce, and no knock on was called. Again, crickets. What's that? Yeah, crickets. I mean, look, I'm objective. I'm saying something that the South Africans should have been penalized for, and I'll do the same thing on this side. I try to be objective. Obviously, I'm a Springbok fan, but I mean, this really harms the quality of the game and the flow of the game, not making calls that should be made. And by the way, okay, we're going to have to get World Rugby to tell us what a neck roll is. Putting your arm around somebody's neck, is that a neck roll? No, it's not. Well, there's a lot of arms around necks in this game. And there were a lot of neck rolls where guys were twisted around, which is a neck roll, and they weren't called. And that's dangerous. That needs to be cleaned up.
While you're talking about, things that should have been reviewed, and the Irish were going on about the fact that Casey, while he was lying on the ground there, the crowd were singing and dancing and maybe not showing the necessary respect, which, I mean, all the DJ did was, keep the thing alive. On the one hand, they were complaining about that. On the other hand, you had Henshaw, being run over by Sia Kolisi in the tram lines. And his mouth guard actually indicated that he should have gone for a HIA. But apparently there was an arrangement before this game, or in the summer internationals, for all the summer internationals, that when the mouth guard indicates an HIA, you can wait until halftime. You don't have to go off immediately.
What?
Now, if you're all about safety and whatever, and head injuries, and you allow that kind of thing to happen. Remember earlier, I think it was in the Six Nations or something, I couldn't remember the other day as well. One of the Wales, the HIA warnings were so many that players kept being sent off to go do HIAs, and apparently they decided to sort of get a sort of a middle way. But I think for me, and Henshaw was now out of the test probably against the Springboks this weekend from concussion that he suffered in that tackle, but he was allowed to play on. I mean, you have to be consequential and you have to be objective. You have a set of rules and apply it. You can't say the one thing and then keep changing it as it suits you.
Well, in fact, I'm glad you brought that one up, because at that, I began to wonder if Luke Pierce was in the Irish payroll. I mean, let's just roll back what happened there. First, Henshaw committed a high tackle. He went in to see his shoulder and his neck. He was upright, fully upright. Sia was upright. So that's you got to go high to get someone when they're standing upright. Sia was going forward, but he was almost entirely upright. So first off, here's what happened. He hits him high, and Sia puts him on the ground, which was great to see. Henshaw goes down, and immediately Luke Pierce stops again, but no player was around Henshaw. He was isolated. The play was forward of that 2 or 3 meters, and he stopped a Springbok drive because there were people on the outside. That really irritated me. Listen, it's inconsistent. Guys go down, they leave them laying on the pitch, for 3 or 4 minutes. He stopped the play immediately. Now, Henshaw's head didn't snap on the turf. He wasn't unconscious. There wasn't blood pouring from somewhere. I appreciate player safety, but that was premature to say the least. And then his concern was, oh, Robbie, are you okay? Robbie, are you okay? Seriously? I mean, that was, I had serious issues with that. And the fact that the TMO, Ben Whitehouse, never looked at that play and said, hey, wait a second. Yeah, okay, Henshaw's down, he's hurt, but it's his fault. That's a yellow card. That should have been a yellow card at the minimum. And that set the tone for this game. And that's right, that was pretty early on. That whole scenario, when that unfolded, I was like, what is going on here?
And I wanted to ask you about what you think the influence of the crowd. We know in the World Cup, there was a lot of things said about the fact that the French crowd can influence the director and they only show certain angles. And let's talk about Luke Pierce specifically. He was brought into this game at quite a late stage. Angus Gardner was supposed to be the referee. He withdrew, and Luke Pierce was sort of parachuted in. Number one, do you think he was not really that well prepared? And secondly, do you think the crowd, because Loftus on Saturday was an exceptionally hostile place, in terms of the anthems being sung and the zombie being sung and Rassie being sung and never sing zombie, sorry, it was Rassie being sung. Do you think that the referee might have been a bit intimidated, for lack of a better word, and maybe that led to these kind of bad decisions?
I'm not convinced of that. I've seen Luke Pierce with huge stadiums before, big crowds in Europe, and I don't think that was it. And he should be prepared. I mean, unless he's exhausted because he flew in the night before, I mean, he should be prepared for this. So I don't understand what was going on in this game between him and Ben Whitehouse. Whitehouse is not doing TMO reviews. Now, to be fair, they did some really good officiating too. I mean, the raking of the ball, but they should have caught the neck roll. The raking of the ball disallowed a try, and that was correct. Also, the decision on Cheslin Colby's try, whether you're a Springbok fan or an Ireland fan, was correct. Why? Because the on-field decision was a try. You have to have compelling evidence to overturn it. The evidence from every angle did not show compellingly that Lowe's foot was down when the ball was released. So that was the right decision. So while I'm criticizing both of them, I'll also compliment them on some very good calls in this game. Again, it's a very tough situation. It's a tough job to being an official in rugby union. And I think that bears it out right there. But I don't know what was going on. The two of them weren't in sync, and they weren't up to scratch a fair amount of time in this game. And I don't know why that happened. Of course, it doesn't help when the team captains are coming over whining illegitimately. When you complain legitimately, that's fine. But Ireland, every time something was going on, was coming over and whining about something. And that was not helping their case, and was also not helping the quality of the game. Because if you come over every 2 minutes and come to the official, hey, what about this? What about this? They get defensive and things go against you. And and I'm not saying he did intentionally, but you get defensive, and it was clearly he was defensive because he warned them. But here's another thing. In the first half, Ireland had like 4 or 5 penalties within the 22 and weren't even given a warning. And then South Africa's given a warning after a couple of those. And then Curtly Arnsay gets a yellow card because they had a couple penalties down there. Consistency, brother. Consistency. That's what we need to see. And so I don't think the crowd was the issue. But I will say one thing about the South African crowd, and I'm going to get roasted for this by the Boca Nation. Folks, stop being such bad sports. Show respect for the kicker. That's been a part of the game forever. Let's not be French. The French are atrocious. At the World Cup, it was the most annoying thing in the World Cup. It didn't matter which team was out there. They were rude and disrespectful for every kicker that was out there. Let's respect the kicker. It's an incredibly difficult job, and so much is riding a line. They have enough to focus on. But to be fair, most of these kickers aren't here in the crowd, but still, it's a bad look. This isn't South Africa. These aren't South Africans. So stop acting like you're French. Now, I'm going to get roasted for that one.
No, you're not, because I agree with you. And last time you and I were at Loftus together, we spoke about exactly the same thing. It was so irritating for South African crowd to boo the kicker while he's lining up the kick. That's just not on. I agree with you 100%. If I get roasted for this as well, then so be it. I don't care.
All right, there we go.
Another thing I wanted to talk to you about, where the ref, I think, slipped up, and I just remembered, is in the scrums.
Yeah.
And what the Irish did was they pushed forward, pulled back. So when the South Africans hit, it looked like the South Africans were engaging early, or they would grab the jersey and pull the South Africans forward towards them, and they would pull them off balance. And again, it looked like made it look to the referee like it was an early engagement from South Africa. And it took a while. I don't know, same thing that happened against Scotland. Remember, before halftime in the World Cup, we suddenly started getting penalties against us in the scrums, which nobody, like Francis Malherbe was so surprised about that. And then after halftime, somebody must have gone and have a talk to him. It was the other way around. And the same thing started happening on Saturday at Loftus. And we were being allowed to scrum as we can scrum. Look at what happened to that devastating penalty try scrum that we scored against them. I've never in my life seen such a powerful scrum from such powerful nations, number one and number two in the world. And the Irish scrum could just as well not have been there at all.
Well, I was thinking that you and I had suited up around a pitch for that scrum because they got blown away. That was ugly. That was ugly. Penalty try. That was brilliant. I think you're onto something here when it comes to the scrums. Look, let's be honest. The scrum is about gamesmanship. It's not just about brute force. It's about gamesmanship. You got to have a plan. And, I think that some of these sides have watched what South Africa does, and they're finding little ways to kind of take advantage of the scrum and cheat, and officials aren't catching on to it. Well, maybe that needs to be a point of reflection for World Rugby's officials too. I haven't talked to Jonathan Kaplan in a while. Maybe I should talk to him and get his thoughts on that.
Definitely very interesting. I'd love to hear that, because I know that the referees are typically out of their depth when it comes to the dark art of scrumming. I mean, they always.
I think we're all out of our depth. The dark art was coming. Wait a second. They got the penalty.
Exactly right. Yeah. So what the hell's going on here? Someone asked me this week who was my player of the match, and I said unequivocally it was Gerard Steenekamp. Now people say, "What are you talking about?" Gerard Steenekamp is deceptively strong. He's not that big. He played a big role in that penalty try scrum. I think he's one for the future, one we must keep an eye on. And of course, he's a Bull, which I'm partial to. But he to me stood out. And I think, didn't get a chance to go to the World Cup last year. Was in the squad and everything, but never went to the World Cup. But I think we must keep an eye on him. He's one for the future.
Oh, I absolutely agree. But my man of the match was pretty clear, pretty obvious. Jesse Creel was an unbelievable stud in this game. He got it done in every aspect of the game. It was brilliant. But listen, I got to give honorable mention to the Bomb Squad. When the Bomb Squad came on, now we're not going to talk about their defense late in the game, but the Bomb Squad came on. It had a big impact, especially in the scrum, but not exclusively there. We also saw it. Malcolm Marks comes in moments later. He jackals the ball. This guy is, what we used to see out of so many previous South African players, including Bismarck du Plessis, always able to steal the ball. Well, Malcolm Marks is there, if not better. This guy is just awesome. He, and of course, we've got one of my favorite players, of course, who's not in the squad right now. That's Dion Fourie. Dion is just brilliant at this sort of thing. So glad to see him finally get a Springbok jersey and win a World Cup. That was one of the most gratifying things for me. One of the most overlooked players in South African rugby finally got his due, and the guy's just brilliant. It's a shame we're not seeing him out there right now.
And the fact that he's a Stormer, of course, made it easier for you.
Well, listen, you're pimping the Bulls players. Why can't I pimp the Stormers players?
I'm unashamedly pro Bulls. You're allowed to be unashamedly pro Stormer. I don't mind. And I mean, Dion Fourie, let's be honest, he's a fantastic player. And it's such a pity that he only got his break at such a late age in terms of the Springboks. I mean,
that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Hey, but listen, don't worry. 10 years from now, if we're still doing this, we'll still be talking about Brock Harris and his 945th Test match.
Yeah. When his 65th birthday, he played his 17,000th game.
Exactly. The indomitable Brock Harris. And look, he's not far behind his protege as the guy with 15 years experience as Skara and Debede.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but Skara looks older than he is with all that gray hair now.
He does.
He's not that old. Yeah.
No, he's not that old. But he has been playing for like 15 years, 15 years, I think it is now.
He's
anyway.
been around the world. Okay, and then talking about tackling and fetching the ball and everything else, I think that's where one of the areas where we fell a bit short. And I look at Kwagga. Yeah, Kwagga did not have a great game. No? So many areas.
No. He was. Well, I mean, look, it was the sarcastic booing or cheering when he caught the ball finally. every time he caught it. That was pretty lame. Quagga is a great player, not his day on the pitch. He had a very poor performance on the pitch, but he wasn't alone. There were a number. I wasn't impressed by the Springboks at all in this game. Only 2 or 3 players, in my view, stepped up and did a great job until the bomb squad came on, and they were good at moments, but then giving up those tries late in the game were just lame. But yeah, no, Quagga had a terrible game, and I'm not going to criticize the crowd for cheering when he caught the ball because it was funny. And, I think it was deserved because he kept dropping the ball. I don't know what was going on. It wasn't raining.
It's not used to being number 8. That's my argument. Is he's a flanker number 1. He's an impact player number 2. He's better off the bench than in the starting lineup when he's not a number 8. But I wanted to ask you, when you said you were not impressed by the Springboks side, I had to stop and pick my jaw up off the floor. I want you to expand on that a little bit, because what on earth are you talking about? I mean, you're going to get flack now. Let me hear what you've got to say.
Well, it was an inconsistent performance, and one opportunity after another squandered. This is very unfortunate. I'm not sure what the game plan was here. This should never have been a close game. Take the officiating out because it went against both sides. So remove the officiating, and they're just inconsistent here. Look, and people are like they're getting the rust off. Isn't that what the Wales game was for? I know it was to test, some new players, but it was also to get the rust off. But I expect to see much more consistent performance. Look, I'm not alone in this, MW. I'll get roasted for this, but Sia Khaleesi himself said we have a lot of room for improvement. So it's not just me. I mean, I said that before Sia, but he's the team captain. It's certainly his prerogative to say we've got some work to do here. I didn't catch any of the press conferences. I don't know what Rossi said about the performance, but I think that look, I'm a fan. That's short for fanatic. I'm fanatical about the Springboks, and I expect the best. And even in victory, look, I mean, we didn't play our best games winning the World Cup by 3 points, but I'm not complaining. We won by 3 points. That's all that matters. But in this game, I expect the Springboks to go, undefeated in this test season. I mean, that's what I expect of them. They won't, but that's what I expect of them.
No, so I mean, they might.
Well, we'll see, but not if they play like they did last week.
Yeah, but you must remember my argument, my counter to that argument is the fact that they played a fairly new pattern, game style of play, with Tony Brown method, we want to call it over here. A player like Andre looked a little bit out of sorts for me in terms of both his form and his adjustment to this new style of play. And then Faf, to me, was not at his best at all. One of the discussions we had was said, listen, for this kind of Tony Brown style of play to work, you need speed. You need exceptional speed. And the names that come to mind when you talk about speed, it's going to be at 9, and it's going to be either Grant Williams or Kobus Reinach. They are going to be probably better suited to this style of play.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, and then maybe, and we were speculating about this a bit, maybe in Durban, once this test might be won, or they decide, listen, we can't lose the series anymore, so it doesn't matter. Why not bring the entire bomb squad onto the field after halftime? Not just the forwards, but every single one of them, including Sasha and Grant Williams, and see how that works in terms of this style of play.
No, I think that's fair. And listen, in addition to full disclosure, I'm a huge fan of Kobus Reinach and a big fan of Grant Williams. I think Grant Williams is arguably, maybe, and this will definitely get me some heat, our best scrum half option for South Africa. I think he's brilliant. I said it in the World Cup, and I stick with it. The guy's got the speed. He handles the ball well. He distributes it well. His kicking is good. Nothing against Faf. Faf is great at scrum half. It's just, I'm looking down the road. That's where I'm looking at. But I do have a question. Is Loot de Jager injured, or is he out of the mix? Okay, I was going to say, because I haven't heard nothing about Loot de Jager. I'm like, where's he at? I mean, he's just disappeared.
He got injured in, I think, the semi-final in Japan.
Okay.
The game that we played against Jesse Creel's or Damien de Allende's team, that you were injured in that game.
Yeah.
So
well,
he's unfortunate. He keeps getting injured, and because he's so tall and lanky, he's probably still our base 5. But I mean, when last was he in form or available? I mean, it was before the World Cup.
Exactly. That's the challenge. I mean, some guys just seem to get injured. I mean, Jean de Villiers, a long history of injuries, and I was there in England at the World Cup when his jaw was broken. Ouch, against Samoa. That was right in front of me. I was like 6 rows up. I could hear that. That was painful. I met John and told him I saw that.
What did he say?
No, he just gave me a look like, yeah, that hurt. Yeah, I didn't really talk about it. So I do have a question about this. They announced the tennis was 43,000, yet it looked like every seat was filled. That can't be right.
That was a mistake. It was 50,000. I got a official one afterwards from the Bulls. Yeah, over 50,000.
Yeah, it had to be over. I mean, because it looked look, we had 52,000 or 51,000 at the URC final, and there were some empty seats up high. I mean, there were a few empty seats. I didn't see any empty seats in this game. And of course, they don't show the whole field, but we're looking from west to east, and the east side is usually where you find empty seats. I didn't find any empty seats. And I was like, no way, it's 43,000. I'm not buying that for a second. But that rendition of the national anthem, not by the singer, she was fantastic, but by the crowd. And by the way, for the look, I'm not getting into politics, but for the race hustlers and the clowns that are always making nonsense, well, yes, oh, they only sing the Afrikaans loud. Every stanza that the crowd sang in each language was robust and loud. You could see no rise or drop off between going from Tswana or Zulu to Afrikaans to English. It was brilliant. That was epic, and that brought tears to my eyes. It was unbelievable.
I must be honest, it's probably the most emotional I've ever felt in an anthem. I might not be remembering all that well, but honestly. And the nice thing for that lady, the singer, is the fact that she allowed the crowd to take over the song almost, if you wanted to.
Yeah, she did. She put the
microphone. Yeah.
That was the best performance of Nkosi Sikelel Africa I've seen that I can remember. Yeah, it was incredible.
Not just by, even when she was singing, she's got an exceptional voice.
Yep.
And the emotion that she brought to the song also was noticeable. I agree with you. There's a petition going around here in South Africa to make her the permanent anthem singer. We'll see how that goes.
I'll sign it.
I'll sign it as well. No two ways about it. I agree.
Yeah,
with you.
no, she was honestly, that was I mean, when that happened, I mean, I get emotional about anthems and about flags. You know, I'm a soldier, you know, and I fought for those things. So, and I know the South African anthem. So, and I really get excited, emotional, and I can't sing, but I caterwaller through it. But, when that happened, man, I was like, let's go.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Anyway, that was exciting. Well, we were going to talk briefly, I think, about Major League Rugby. If you want, just the playoffs for that are not until July 20th and 21st. And again, we've got these American teams. It's the end of the season. I'm not really sure why this season is designed like this, because normally that's not the case. But 4 games upcoming. On July 20th, it's New England Free Jacks hosting Old Glory DC. Now, Old Glory did not have a particularly good season. They finished the season 7 wins, 7 losses, and 2 draws, but they get into the playoffs, so good news for them. But New England is the top of the class in that Eastern Conference, 11 wins, 5 losses. So that game is on the 20th. Also on the 20th, the Houston SaberCats will be hosting the Dallas Jackals. Houston is the class of the league, 14 wins, 2 losses. Dallas slips into the playoffs despite a 6-win, 10-loss record. But congratulations to them. They're an expansion franchise, only their 2nd season. And then the next day, the 21st of July, New Orleans Gold will be hosting Chicago Hounds. New Orleans is one of the original franchises in this league. 10 wins, 6 losses. They've been a consistently good team, but I think that's one of their better seasons. Chicago is an expansion franchise just in their 2nd season. 8 wins, 7 losses, and a draw. And they've got some really big marquee names. In fact, the game that the USA played last week against Romania was played at their stadium in Chicago. But this game will be played in New Orleans. And finally, Seattle Seawolves, who've been the toast of the league for years, 2-time champions the first 2 years. They'll be hosting the San Diego Legion. Both of those are original franchises. And this season, Seattle's 11-5, and San Diego's also 11-5. That's probably going to be the marquee matchup of that weekend. But that's Major League Rugby up and coming. And of course, we talk about this because lots of South Africans play Major League Rugby. They come over here. Players like Johan Mumsen and Adrian Carlse and so many others. So it's great to see that. Joe Peterson used to play for San Diego. Of course, you know, a guy from Western Province, Stormers, but Peterson is retired now, I think. But a lot of players come over here, and it's great to see them bring the South African brand of rugby. And it's not just the players. Coaches, Pote Uman is the coach at Houston, and the director of rugby, of course, is Henneke Meyer. So, yep.
Yeah, it's always interesting to hear, but yeah. Thanks for that. We've run out of time now, but this was an interesting and a bit of a different conversation. I enjoyed that. Thank you.
Well, it's my pleasure. I look forward to a little bit shorter than we usually do, but we've both been pressed for time this week. And so thanks to folks for viewing. Appreciate your patronage of the program and of this channel and my opportunity to do a collaboration here with MW. I really enjoy it. Rugby is best when you get to talk to somebody about it. And that's what we're doing. So awesome.
I never felt it more than I felt it on Saturday because I wasn't at the stadium. I was alone in my lounge. And I felt so alone. And I was like, I want to have a look at it, listen to this. And there's nothing there. I've sat to sit there and watch it. You know, I know exactly what you mean.
You got a prediction for Saturday?
Yeah, I think we're going to beat them. And I think we're going to beat them more comfortably than we did last time, probably about 10 points or so.
I would agree with that. It's not going to be as close. The Springboks are going to look a lot smoother. Oh, by the way, speaking of players, before we go, players who disappeared, where was Villiers at? Was it a hangover from the concussion? I was concerned about that. I don't think Villiers had a good game this past week. So, yeah. Now, for Ireland, Caelan Doris will be the captain this time. Bundy Aki is out. That's good news for the Bucks because that guy is dangerous. Gary Ringrose is back. Connor Murray will be replacing Craig Casey at the scrum half position. That's not a drop down. Connor Murray is a very good scrum half. Robbie Henshaw and James Lowe, both of whom they kind of indicated would not be available this week, are in the lineup. So, but I still think that 10 points or better. Springboks win, and piece of cake.
All right, we'll talk again next week, just before the Portugal test, and we'll have a look at what happened in this game.
This is the Rugby Ascendant Podcast with Envia Velman and Chris Wyatt.